All right, welcome. Thank you for joining us today for San Antonio Entrepreneurship Week. This morning we're with Beto Gomez, Dr. Beto Gomez, talking about solving civic issues with entrepreneurship. It's a topic that I know is probably brought to light a lot more since the pandemic because many more issues that have presented themselves, and even within various other markets. Unfortunately, like our snowpocalypse, we had the energy grid seemingly fail us. There are multitudes of ways that I think that entrepreneurship can play in to solving issues that serve the public. And one of the opportunities that has existed for Beto and his team, the IRIS team, has been in developing solutions for governments to serve and engage with the public. And so I think that if you haven't heard of them before, they're the developers of the 311 San Antonio app. They've also worked with a number of other cities throughout the world, I guess would be the easiest way to say it. And also were participants in the Techstars Arcadis in Amsterdam, was it? I believe that's correct.
Yeah.
Yes. And so there's a lot of different angles that we can take this. And so I'm really happy to have you, Beto. You're extremely knowledgeable about this. I mean, this is your forte. And so I'm just extremely happy to have you today. And ideally we can have an engaged discussion about where these things fall together. So thank you. And I'd love, if you don't mind, just I'll pass it over to you, in fact, at the moment.
Definitely. Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it. Thank you for the invitation, for all the work that you guys are doing at Launch SA and for putting this event together. And yeah, I mean, like you're saying, right? We've been, me and my team have been working on this space for a while. The way we started was with City Flag, right? Which is kind of the precursor of IRIS, that is our company right now. But just to kick it off, right, I want to tell a little bit about the story of how I came into civic tech, or how do I became an entrepreneur in the civic space, and how also with my team we created a company to start solving issues that were part of the community. And so the way it started is, as a citizen, because that's one of the roles that you play in society, right? I mean, you play many roles as part, in your life, but as a citizen, you have a civic duty, right? I mean, it's expected for you to participate, to make community be a functional, group of people, right? And so the way we came into this space is, for me personally, I was at that time living in Spain. I was doing my PhD, focused on social movements, on how the new, mobile technologies, the smartphones, were changing communication and dynamics on these movements, right? So this was back in 2010, 2012, and when I was living there, it was the whole Arab Spring season. So you had the Arab Spring, you had also the Acampados, which was a social movement in Spain, the Indignados, and then you had in Mexico also another student movement, and then you also had the Occupy Wall Street. So it was like a domino effect. All around the world, you started seeing these large social movements, particularly of young people who had all of a sudden this device in their hands, and they could start having a more active role in their communities, in their societies. Excuse me. And so I started observing all of that, right? How were they organizing? What channels they were using? What were the conversations about? And at the same time, you had the government who all of a sudden was scrambling to identify the right ways to engage with all this new energy, right? That was being channeled through the mobile devices, but they didn't have the tools, right? The way that the internet worked, 10, 11 years ago, it was more one directional, right? It was we have a website, and so we're already in the digital age, but the website was pretty much a pamphlet, right? Like just a flyer with information, but there was no way to engage in conversation. You didn't have the chats, right? You couldn't have a bot that you could interact and get information immediately. That didn't exist 10 years ago. So there was a disconnect, right? People wanted to engage, but the government didn't have the tools. And whatever was out there, it was still what was considered the web 1.0, just one directional. And so by observing all of this, I started thinking, well, there has to be a way, right? I mean, there has to be a way to improve this experience of communicating and having a more active role in your community. And so through my research in civic engagement and innovation, and civic settings, I started talking to folks, and I started talking to friends who were also in academia, but also who were in the field, right? Who were running campaigns. And I was talking to people, old and young. And one of these, active, young, political agents was, Beto Altamirano, who I met back in college, and I saw that he was very active as well. And so we started brainstorming, started telling him everything that I was doing on the academia, and he started telling me everything that he was doing in the field, working on political campaigns. And so we started brainstorming, and this idea of, well, maybe we can, work in an app, right? And so, moving forward, I come back to the United States, and we started working on a proposal, right? On giving legs to this idea. How do we make it happen? How do we make it happen? And so the first thing that we did, right, number one, is we identified a problem. And the problem was there was a disconnect, and there was a lack of a proper communication tool that could be used to engage with government. And so we decided to create a mobile application, right? But we wanted to make it dynamic, and we wanted to take the spirit of the age. So we decided to add a gamification. Let's make it fun. Let's make it more attractive, and let's try to not only make it utilitarian or transactional, meaning that you could report something and that was it, right? Because there was something like that, but it was the same issue as with the government websites. It was just one directional, right? So we decided to create an engagement loop, and that engagement loop was you report something, you get rewarded, the city receives it, they resolve it, and then you get notified, right? And so you get this reward sense of you fulfilled your civic duty. And on top of that, you get an intrinsic reward, which gives you social capital, recognition, and so you feel good and you want to do it more often. And so that's how we started, right? First was identify a problem, but also talking about entrepreneurship at a different level, right? Is in order for you to really, really sort of dive deep into an issue and to have the strength and the energy to push, an initiative like this, you need to be passionate about it. You need to really believe that this is an issue that affects you. I mean, you need to recognize that, but you need to believe that you can actually fix it, right? Because that's entrepreneurship. Is I see an opportunity, and me alone, I am the one. My team, our team, our community is the one that can actually tackle this problem. Because if we don't do it, nobody else will, right? So that's in essence, right, the spirit of entrepreneurship. And so you go at it, right? And back then, we were just in a way, idealistic and passionate about building this business or creating this product so that we can then get some traction and see where it took us. So that's the second point, right? You need to have skin in the game. You need to be passionate about your idea, your solution, so that you can see it through all the way. And so once you identify that idea and you have an understanding, you have elaborated some sort of initial plan, an MVP, if you will, right? Then you get to work on it, right? Because as an entrepreneur, you have an idea, and so first of all, you need an audience, you need a market, you need to prove market fit, and then on top of that, you also need, of course, a budget, some funding, so that you can make it happen. And so the way we started to move towards that direction is, okay, we already have an app. We already thought about it. We already designed it. We know, what we want to do with it. So now the next step was, how do we build it? How do we develop a business model around this product, right? How do we find the first government that is gonna want to work with us? Because that was what we were doing differently than many other similar projects out there. Because people were just creating these apps and you could report it. You didn't get any points or anything, but once you reported something, the government wasn't obliged to receive that and let you know that it happened. It's like, okay, you guys report all you want, right? It's like, this is not our product, go ahead. And so that was the challenge for us. It's like, in order for this solution to work, the government needs to be part of it. They need to have some skin in the game. They need to be accountable to these, to these reports, to these service requests. And so that was a big challenge because we needed to have a government to support us. So how do we do that, right? And then we started looking for opportunities, which is also a big lesson here, and a big tip is you need to find ways to fund your idea, right? And so we started pitching. We kind of went on the pitching tour, pitching all the different conferences, every stage that we could get ourselves on it. And finally, we found this opportunity that it was the MacArthur Foundation Latino Innovators Challenge, right? That was by Voto Latino, an organization, and we send our proposal. We pitched to multiple judges, and we got funded, right? And with those funds, then we got to work, right? We put together a team. We started working on the prototype. We developed a prototype. And then it's like, we're ready, right? But then we start going for to the government. And well, the first thing they tell you in government is like, so what other cities are you working with? Or do you have a success case? And then it becomes the chicken and the egg problem. It's like, well, I don't have it because I haven't been able to get a client, and I cannot get a client because I haven't been able to build this success case. So is this loop that you have to find a way to break through. And fortunately enough, at that time, the city of San Antonio puts forward an RFP that they're looking for a new app to replace the one that they had, the 311 application that preceded us. And so we applied, right? We made the case about the new generation of app that we were bringing to the table, and we were being a local company and being committed, being part of the community, and having taking the game and really wanted to push our community forward and being a part of it. So that's also really important in civic tech, right? A lot of the projects that emerge on this space that are created are local, at a local scale, because that's how it all starts, right? These are people who live in their communities, who nobody else knows better than they do what's really aching, right? What's important for them, what's lacking, right? What needs to be improved. And so the civic tech movement in its essence It's about people from the community coming together, pooling their resources to solve their own problems. And how do they do that? Well, now they have access to technology, they have access to tools, platforms that are very cheap, that you don't need a lot of budget. And then you have the skills, which is also another thing, this concept of citizen science. Now, maybe, how to run some numbers or do analytics. There's another person who knows how to design. There's another one that, can program a little bit. And so they all come together and they put together this, ad hoc technology that make it available. And then you start with the cycle of iterations, right? You start getting feedback from the community and you start building an idea. So that's just kind of as a parenthesis where the entrepreneurship methodology or modus operandi come into place, and you start building solutions from the ground up. So we got the contract with San Antonio, right? And it was the first time, actually, this is something that a lot of civic tech companies go through, that we're small startup, 4 people, 5 people, and all of a sudden we're working with the 7th largest city in the United States that is very robust in its bureaucratic structure. So we started working, you can imagine just a small group of entrepreneurs working with 6 or 7 departments: innovation, IT, 311, whatever, like 9 departments. And it's the first time for them to work with a startup. And so what does that mean? Is like, well, first of all, they're used to working with enterprise level companies. So you have a whole team dedicated to respond to your needs. And then also in government, now it's changing, but a couple of years back, even, they're more used to working on waterfall development projects. So they're expecting for you to present a project that has every little detailed plan. Then they want to know the calendar, and it's a huge planning that goes into this software development methodology, the waterfall. And so as a startup, the way you operate is an agile development. So you want to make it fast. This is how these type of projects are born, right? They're just built from the ground up. So that was a challenge. And similar challenges we had to go through, but finally, we got the app and we launched, and that was the first project that we as City Flag launched. And this app has been highly successful. The previous app, in 2-3 years, they only had about 6,000 users and 10,000 reports. We've been live with this app for the past 2.5 years, almost 3 years, and we have over 70,000 users and over 200,000 reports have been created. So the numbers are there. There's been a huge increment in the engagement that this app has generated. We love to also make some updates, and we're working on it so that it evolves with the time. But with cities, once you enter with them, it's not as easy as I'm just gonna push updates and make it dynamic, because it works differently, right? It's not a startup. It works with there's a lot of stakeholders, and it's part of it, which is fine, right? It takes time for government to catch up to the business practices. But so then that's how we created a company, because after this big success case, we were able to replicate the similar initiative in different cities in the US, in Mexico, Latin America. We started working in Europe. And so that took us to an opportunity that you mentioned before, right? Which was Amsterdam, right? So there is an opportunity, right? Always looking for opportunities, which is part of the entrepreneurship. You always have to keep, your ear on the ground, what's happening, looking for opportunities, how to grow your business, how to expand your network. And so the Techstars program, which is a startup accelerator, right? One of the biggest in the world. And they put out a call for companies to participate in an accelerator program focused on smart cities, right? And they do this type of programs with corporate partners. And the corporate partner for this program was Arcadis. And Arcadis is a global design, engineering, and consultancy firm. They build infrastructure projects all over the world, like bridges and schools and parks and museums and highways, you name it. Like they're just work on every aspect of urban development. And so we moved to Amsterdam for a few months to do this accelerator. And by working with this company, because of course, since they're being the sponsors, everyone was engaged in activities, right? And so 10 companies were selected, right, all over the world. They were from Australia, from Spain, from Germany. There were a couple from the US, one from California, and us from Texas. And we moved there, and we start pitching our idea and what we do and how we do it. And then people start asking, hey, that's really interesting. Us, companies, we're also interested in engaging with local communities. I mean, we go into the community, we build, we close streets, we're gonna start building, breaking ground and putting things together. And so that has an impact on community. And what we do is we go out there, we do town halls, we inform them, we go door to door. There's a lot of things that we do that currently we don't have a proper tool that allows us to receive all this feedback, all this input, and then analyze it and make it part of our project, right? So community stakeholder management, community relations, you name it, right? You have to take into account the community in which you are going to be working. And so we started receiving all this feedback and all this validation of what we're doing, that is not only important for cities, but also for the private sector, for these companies, right? And that's when we start, thinking, okay, there's something there, right? There's an opportunity. We can continue working with governments, and then we might have another opportunity to scale and open another vertical and start working with, the private sector. All right, so we have a new idea. We come back, and early 2020, we know what happens. Kind of like the saying of Mike Tyson, right? Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And in this case, we got punched in the face by COVID, right? So chaos. What do you do, right? And so as a startup, right, we are agile. We have a functional team, very competent team. And so we go back to our roots, civic tech. All right, our community is aching. What do we do? So it took us a week or so, and we developed a COVID-19 mobile application, right? And what did this app offer? It offered a way for you to answer a survey, right? A questionnaire, and it was a self-screening tool, right? Just to identify if you had symptoms, and if you had symptoms, who to contact to get more information, how to schedule appointments for testing. We just started gathering information from open sources, and we put together this application to give communities to have a self-screening tool, but also to request for information and to learn more about what to do. And we capture the Johns Hopkins data, that it was this dashboard that everyone was using it, and we captured that and we put it in the app. And so we were aggregating different information just to organize information for our community, right, through a good interface, which is kind of what we've been doing. And so then we started going to all our clients and we started giving them this app, and it's like, we just want to do this to help. The whole world right now is in a wind world, and everyone's trying to get their feet to put their feet together and get off the ground and finding ways to operate amidst all this chaos. And so we go back to this civic duty, civic engagement, and we get traction, right? We strike some partnerships in Mexico. over 10,000, over like 10, 15 cities started using our tool in Mexico, in the US as well. But then, you know, um, cities start developing their own policy and they start getting their own technology. So that was just we did something that is still being used, but it was not where we wanted to go, but because we could, and we felt the kind of the civic duty to do it, we went ahead and built that tool. But we continue working on this private sector idea that we came with on our backpacks when we came back from Europe. And at the end of 2020, we kind of had this migration of all right, so I guess we're going to start working with the private sector. And we got through this rebranding exercise and phase because we realized that what we were doing, City Flag, our company, was very industry specific, and the name was descriptive, right? City Flag. You flag an issue in your city, right? So, and we were being put into this bucket of GovTech, of civic tech, which is kind of what we started. And yes, that's part of our DNA. But we had outgrown that concept. We had identified new opportunities, new verticals for us to participate, and we wanted to open up possibilities. And so through this exercise of imagining ourselves and our mission and our vision, we made a change and we rebranded ourselves as Iris, right? Iris is a name that is much more evocative, right? It can mean anything, but specifically, Iris is the part of your eye that provides color to your vision. So, right, in a way, you're seeing, you're being part of you're an observer in your community, but also it could be the name of, your aunt, your neighbor, right? Your friend at school. Iris is a name, and it's also a flower, by the way. And so, it's much more evocative, and the possibilities are endless, right? It becomes a real technology company, and our scope expands. And so that's end of 2020, end of 2019, beginning of 2020, right? And so now we had learned so much by working with governments. And we have learned also the opportunities, but the challenges of working in the GovTech civic space, right? Eventually, you come up with an idea, you're able to get your first client, you validate product market fit, you start working, in your community, in your city, you solve an issue, and then you want to scale it, right? Because that's just the momentum and the inertia of creating a project. Like, it has to grow, right? Nothing stays just as it is. It has to continue the cycle of building a product or a company. You have to mature. On civic tech, it's complicated because specifically in the area that we were, right, in this type of applications that we were developing, there are others that might have other challenges and opportunities. But for ourselves, the challenge was all cities although have some similarities, they also are unique organisms. And so the moment that you want to take a one fits all, it just doesn't work. And we know that, right? You can think of that example in many different areas of community life. All cities have specific needs. They want certain configurations. They want certain features that you haven't built, and so you end up in this cycle more being a consultant, right, than an actual product-driven technology company, which is and was our vision has always been, right? A product-driven company with something that we can scale and take all over the world. And so So that was a challenge that we identified, and we took all that experience and we created a product that was fully configurable, meaning that anyone could create the categories that you wanted to add on an app, that you can, as an organization, as a government, as a company, you have a platform that you configure, that you set up to your needs. And on the mobile app, we created something that anyone from any community could download and interact in any city with any type of project. And that's the Iris app. So we created one single product that is called Iris, right? How is it different from the 311 app that we created? It's different. It's different in some ways, in many ways, but it also at its core, it continues to be about solving civic issues, about working with communities and enabling the collaboration within the community. And so for communities, we created this app so that they can interact with certain elements in their urban environment. So for example, let me illustrate it first with a story, and then I'll talk about more about the product. So let's say that you know um, this issue of going about downtown or in your community, and there's always something going on. They open a street, they started construction on this building, and we all have the same question: what are they doing there, right? Or what are they going to build there? There are no signs. It's just a construction, fence, and you have no idea, right? And who can you talk to? You try to talk to the construction worker. It's like, I don't know, man. I'm just working here, right? I'm just putting together bricks. So you don't have information, and so we believe that that's something that people want to know, especially now where we're moving to an urban lifestyle. Everyone, like by 2050, over 90% of the population will be living in cities. So changes in infrastructure are happening also in America, right? We have this crumbling infrastructure. That's why you have this push now from the new government to modernize infrastructure, highway mobility, urban, etc. So it is a big issue. It's an issue of our age, and so now with this application, if you see that's happening, you just pull up your app and you can see in a map all the projects that are going on around you, right? Oh, I see this. And who's building it? Oh, okay, so it's this company. And what's it about? Oh, okay, awesome. And what's the timeline? How long is it going to be open, right? And so you can see and you can learn about this project immediately. So think of it as a Zillow for infrastructure projects. So not only construction, but also there is a park, right? So for example, right now, if you're in downtown San Antonio, and the Western Urban Park, right, the Legacy Park, you could see, right? You can download the Iris app and you can find out information about this park, and you can also access news. You can answer surveys that they put forward. You can look at the events and save them in your profile. So you become part of that community, right? You're part of the community of that park, and you get all the information, and you can provide your feedback. You can share photos. You can do all these things. But also you can learn about everything else in your community. What buildings are they putting? They're preparing in downtown, right? What streets are going to be closed this month or next month, or tomorrow when I'm going to work. So it becomes also a very useful tool for you to navigate your city. So that's one way. You as a resident, as a citizen, as someone who moves around a new urban environment. Now another way is, there are also a lot of curious entrepreneurial members of communities, right? And maybe you're thinking about opening up a restaurant, right? Or putting together a little store, a food truck, a fashion, kind of like a retail store or a barber shop, whatever. And how do you find information about what's the right area for you, right? How do you know where the city is going to go in the next year, right? In the next 6 months or the year and a half? How do you find the right location right now? How do you start doing that? I don't know. I mean, you go to the website, you get lost, some time there trying to find out information about urban development. And so it's hard, right? And so with Iris app, you're gonna be, you can see where the projects are going to be, because of course you can filter and you can see, well, show me the projects that are gonna be happening in the next 6 months. And then you can find out places where there's gonna be some construction that will pull some economic resources to that area. And so you can be one step ahead, right? So that's the type of information that as a user, you're gonna be able to find, consult, but also that's the type of community that you can be part of and contribute, through your feedback, and also get replies from this organization, because that's the other side of it, right? For design and construction and engineering companies, we have a dashboard, right? We have a web app that they can use to manage communities, right? To keep them informed. And it's funny because sometimes we talk to some of these development companies and construction companies, and what they say is, some of them like it, of course, like very similar to government. Some governments are like, yes, I want to engage my community, I love this, let's do it. But we know that's not true for all of them, right? Some of them are like, oh, no, 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 I don't want them to be posting anything, it's just a headache, I don't want that. So it's the same for this type of companies. Some are very transparent and are very forward, and they want to engage with communities. But for other companies, it's like, no, I just want to start working, break ground, put my people there, work, and I don't want anything with the community, right? It just become a headache. But hey, I mean, you're breaking ground with my community. Why shouldn't I have the right to express myself and to communicate and ask questions? So I guess it's like with everything else. First, there's resistance, then there is acceptance, and finally, there is adoption, right? You have to adapt to the times. And so it's going to happen here too, right? We're just the first ones to open up this channel of communication, because similar to what government happened, right? First they didn't want to, and now it's all about not only residents but our users, right? Our community. Same thing is there. So that's what we're seeing. That's where we're taking, that's where we are putting in our product, and we are working to provide this tool for the community members so that they can participate and they can have a more active voice. And we're also providing these companies an opportunity to be proactive. To if you're having a hard time and you don't want community to talk bad about your project, or whatever, just get out there, be the first to say, hey, we're building this, here's some information about these projects, here's some what we're going to finish. Actually, let me ask you some questions, because I'm interested in to see how we can collaborate with each other, and so you can actually activate your community. It's happening, right? It's part of it. And so that's what we're doing. We are providing transparency and data for both the community, but also for the project managers, design, and engineering companies, right? And that's where we at right now. That's kind of been our journey through the civic tech, now to kind of this more urban environment, incorporating more stakeholders in communities, governments. Of course, they can still use our platform, right? It's just that they're going to have to operate through the Iris app. And actually, I mean, we're still working with governments in Mexico. Of course, we're working with governments. We have clients in San Antonio, and that's still part of our business. But there's now this Iris app is the product that we're beginning to scale, at an international level, just with one app. So we're fulfilling our vision of having one product, bringing communities together and providing a useful tool for them to shape their environment and activate, collaborative communities. And so finally, right, I think um, the way you solve issues, um, civic issues with entrepreneurship, is you have to be passionate about your community first. Number one, right? You have to really be part of your community, because no one else from outside your community is going to come and solve issues that they haven't experienced. So you have to be passionate about your community. It needs to be a personal problem. Um, and then you need to work in an MVP that allows you to provide a clear value proposition of what you're trying to build. And you can do this fast, right? Like I mentioned, now you can collaborate, you can do it on your own, and you can find users. If it's a general problem in your community, you'll get traction immediately, right? Because it's a shared concern, it's a shared issue, and everyone recognizes it, but no one has done it. So that's how, being an entrepreneur in civic issues happen. And finally, number three, you have to hustle, right? Um, you have to really, really, really hustle, make it work. You're gonna step on some toes, right? Because if it hasn't happened, maybe it's because of inaction, right? Or because of decision not to make it happen. But if it's there, and it's bothering the community, someone's gonna do it. But whoever does it, needs to be ready for that resistance, and you need to be persistent. You need to be resilient. You need to hustle, and you need to find a way, creative way to make it happen, right? So that would be kind of my conclusion. And Ryan, thanks for the opportunity. I would like to right now get it back to you and see if there's any questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And
Definitely.
if anyone has questions, you're more than welcome to either drop them in the chat or unmute and show your face and just join the conversation. No sweat, no pressure, right? I'm really glad I was writing notes while you were talking, because there's a lot of things. I mean, having a relationship with the government to begin with through Launch SA, I I know a few of those things, like scope creep. Like there's always seemingly like a never-ending list of things that they want to add to the. And then you were talking about the challenge of the challenge of really each cities are different, and that's what I've noticed holistically, especially in building programming. Like for example, our break fast and launch program, it's for culinary, but how well that transfers into Houston, and just on like a regulation level, can be so different. Like their zoning is different, or their food safety concerns are different, or the departments are different. And so to the one-to-one is not always one-to-one. And so it becomes very different. So I was actually, it was good to hear that you addressed that within, because just seemingly never ending. But one of the areas I was really curious about, and I don't, maybe it's just in my recollection, I'm wrong, probably I'm wrong, but I feel like you built the app and then came along the opportunity for the RFP. Is that correct? Like you already had a proof of concept and then the RFP came out, or was it the RFP for the initial and then you built the app?
We already had, we had a design, right? We had a prototype that we were working with. It was not what you see right now. So meaning that we didn't have the 311 SA app before the RFP.
Right.
We have a model, an MVP, an initial model of, let's say, a 311 SA app, but we didn't have many things that they ended up requesting. So that's why we had to go through an excruciating process of adapting the sort of first model of what we had to the required needs. And it was painful because they had their own legacy system, so we had to adapt what we had to what they already had, right? And it was a long way for us to really fulfill those requirements. But we learned a lot along the way. we mature as a company. It gave us a structure, right? So we learned a lot as well because we had to learn, right? There was a huge learning curve about how cities really work internally, right? There's a lot of process, there's a lot of red tape, there's a lot of scope creep, there's a lot of different voices trying to, I want this, I want that, and everyone's kind of wants to have their own ideas into the product. So we just had to be taking all those inputs and figuring out a way to make the best decisions and to not really go on forever, and have the product die before you actually launched. So that was kind of how it worked out.
I dig it. Chris, I saw you turn your camera on. I don't know if you have any questions or
yeah, I got a few questions for you, Benny.
Of course.
How do you guys monetize this when you're working with governments? Do you guys sell subscriptions? Is it software as a service, or is it a one-time purchase from you? How are they doing it?
Yes, with government, it's been just direct contracts, right? Through RFPs. Is basically the city puts out a proposal, a budget, and you adapt your proposal to that budget. That's one way, right? And that's the most straightforward, and that's how many cities operate. Another way that we worked on, especially in other countries, is based on population, right? Our pricing model is based on population. If it's a city of less than 100,000 people, then it's a price. If it's over 150,000 people, there's a price. If it's over 350,000 people, or if it's over 1 million, then we adjust prices because there's certain complexities of data management and databases, and basically that's how it's also done in the industry. So basically that's kind of like the model that the GovTech operates under.
Well, can I ask you a question about that as well then? It seems like it might be pretty labor intensive when you initially set up a city. You reference like all the different departments, everything else they may want to communicate with you or with, I guess, their people. Do you guys dedicate someone on staff for that? I mean, for a city?
So yes, so we have let's say we have a tool, right? We have the product is built, and initially there's always a conversation. Well, this is what we want. Well, we actually need this feature. So yes, we have to dedicate a product specialist and a project manager, and then of course we also assign development resources, and we gather those criteria, those requirements. We create an SOW, and based on that we make the modifications to the platform. And as we grew, right, we kept evolving in the type of technologies we were using, right? We needed to build something that was probably serverless, built on microservices, and using some of the programming languages that were the most easy to integrate to other platforms, so that we could make those iterations, those configurations as fast as possible. And so that also kept us on our toes, and kept driving innovation, because we couldn't just build something on legacy code, because that was just gonna hurt us down the road.
Who did you make responsible for moderation then? I mean, let me be clear. So if you're interacting with a government's interacting with the people that live in the city, right? It sounded like, based off what you said, the citizens get to post things up or give information, right? Who is then responsible for moderation? Someone on staff at the government?
Yes, in this case, for example, in San Antonio, is the 311 department. They are the ones operating the service request as one more of their channels, right? They take phone calls, they take emails, and they take requests through the mobile application. So in this case, it's the city. It's always the city with us. It's always a department who decides to champion the project, like 311, or it's maybe we also work with economic development offices in different cities who want to put forward certain categories. That's also another key aspect of it, right? It's like, I mean, cities are different, and not all cities have the resources to respond to 100 different service requests, right? So some cities, they start very basic. Let's say, okay, we have the capacity to focus on potholes, right? So we're just gonna focus on potholes and picking up trash. Okay, so that's it, right? That's what you can do. Good. So now you're gonna do that, and of course they have an additional channel and they collect that information, but they don't commit to say you can report anything or we're gonna fix it, right? It's also the way to be proactive, right? And so it depends on the city, it depends on the department that decides to champion the project, and it depends on the resources that they want to assign to specific issues.
Yeah, it sounds like you made something pretty cool there. I completely understand how you use it with the government. My question for you is, in the private sector, what applications are people doing, or what, like a business, what are they using it for? It seems like it's a little bit more limited.
So you mean our clients right now, how they're using it, the private companies?
Well, yeah, there's such a need for interaction between the government and the citizens. And so there's all these different departments, everything that they need to communicate. And it seems like you have a good solution for that. But for like, let's say like Pizza Hut or something like that, is that someone who you might work with given the opportunity?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the way the type of communication that we offer right now for these type of companies, these businesses, is you have the ability to put surveys, so you can you can create surveys and have people answer to those surveys. For example, at Pizza Hut, you could give coupons. We are building gamification in our application. It's not there yet, but we're building it similar to the 311, and we want to give extrinsic rewards, which is something that we didn't manage to do with San Antonio. We do intrinsic reward, meaning digital rewards, but we always wanted to have that private sector, extrinsic rewards in the forms of coupons, 2-for-1 at a coffee shop, whatever. And for these types of businesses, is you could do surveys, right? You could also post news about your business. We're gonna come up with the special pizza for the month of September or whatever. And we also do events. So if you have events, you have a section of events, and you can save those events to your profile so that they're in your calendar. But you also give them the opportunity to report any type of issue that you want, because you control that from your web app, right? From your dashboard. You say, okay, I want them to report service, cleanliness, and with maybe temperature in the building. And so they can report on those 3 things if that's what you need, right? So you have this tool that allows you to collect direct feedback from your community. So it could be used by Pizza Hut, but it could also be used by any other type of business. And we're starting with this industry. But if we can move towards that direction, I mean, we'll love to. Definitely.
Okay. All right. Thanks for answering my questions.
Definitely.
Yeah,
thank you for your questions.
This reminds me a lot of the Nextdoor app. Have you heard of Nextdoor? For some people, it's the bane of their existence.
Yes.
But yeah, so I remember, I think it was about 3 years ago, I was looking at Nextdoor thinking like, oh man, this is a great way to connect with the community, to share with them the resources. And I was like, I wonder how I would advertise on it. And they didn't really have that functionality. And I looked into it, and it turned out that they didn't intend, or that was never a model that they thought of, which was how to monetize the app. They were just like, we just want to connect the people. And all of a sudden now I think they just started doing that, and they have a focus on it. But that interconnectedness of the citizens to maybe it's local opportunities within their community, like finding a local plumber, or finding a local restaurant, or getting recommendations from the other people that live in their community. I can see so many potentials for opportunity as it relates to engaging with citizens. And that's seemingly always been the hardest part for for everybody, right? It's once you exist as a company, people stop thinking of you as a community citizen. And I think that's kind of it's a weird striation, right? And once you interact as a government, there's a whole level or a whole different set of preconceived notions that say, well, they're not going to help me, or no, that's not going to work. And, you know, like it's very interesting. Right. And so I was also thinking earlier, as you were talking about how in Africa, for example, the community is really you know, kind of come around themselves to create their own, almost their own mobile banking system, which, you know, has almost nothing to do with banks practically. It's, you know, everything's run through various apps and stuff like that to send money to people and stuff like that. And it's interesting to see how the citizens often take that control into their own hands to you know, solve their own problems. And so I know that you're, sorry, before I have a lot of like ADHD with this, but you were talking about the opportunities that exist in sharing the developments happening in communities, and it made me think of the potential applications even for like a VR component. Like, you know, not only can I know that this building might be going up, but I can also theoretically envision it like, oh, this is what it might do to the street, or this is what it might do to the skyline. And now I have even more of a, maybe it's an excitement towards it all, maybe it's something else, but yeah, it becomes very multi-dynamic. And so how do y'all identify, because it seems like there are infinite amount of projects that you could solve. How do you identify which ones to actually place your resources and time towards?
Well, I mean, you know, you hit the nail on the head with kind of the applications of emerging technologies that you could integrate into your product, because so we are going to be adding renders. Some of the information that we get for these projects include renders, so you're going to be able to see those. But eventually, we see that as an opportunity, right? Moving into the AR space, right? The augmented reality. You pull up your phone and you can see the project come up, you know, they're in real time, you know, digitally built on the, you know, built environment, meaning that sort of like Pokemon Go. You see the Pokemon, but here you're gonna be able to see the building or the park or, you know, the commercial area, the commercial shop, whatever. If we got that information, we can make it happen, right? So we're going to move toward that, you know, that space, and that's where we want to be able to provide as an experience, right? An emerging experience on your community and your environment. Now, how do we select which projects to onboard? So what we're doing is this is public and open data. A lot of this data, it's open, right? So you could go to San Antonio website and see what projects are going to happen, right? Or you could go to other cities, you know, websites, and you could find some of this information. But the thing is, I mean, that is information that is not properly organized, and it's not in a nice UX, right? On a nice UI, or it's just a spreadsheet, a database. So because it's open, we can have access to it, and so we're collecting projects from everywhere we can, and we're gonna upload all those projects to the app, right? So here in San Antonio, we're gonna have about 1,000 projects. We're also gonna have in Austin. You know, in Austin there's a lot more happening over there. So we'll have about 2,000 projects, and we're starting with some of the most rapid growing cities, you know, in urban development in the United States, right? So Miami, San Francisco, Boston, you know, Atlanta, those type of cities is where we're gonna start populating the application with all the projects that we can, you know, find that are open, of course.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, going back to that whole next door concept, I'm curious, how has there been an opportunity where the private space has approached and said, hey, how can we throw ads on this thing? Or how, you know, like seemingly y'all have an audience, like how do I give you money to be seen more? Has that come about yet? Or is that like in a pipeline of development where maybe it's not inherently the 311 app because that's maybe more proprietary or something, but underneath different, maybe more towards what you're talking about now, this AR potential variant as well, or addition.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, so far we haven't started working on it, or we haven't discussed it with any business, but it makes sense, right? I think it's as you see projects, since we're gonna have all these projects, right? And eventually, if people start adding feedback to one particular project, the company will know, right? We'll let them know, hey, people are commenting on your project, might want to check it out. And so then that's how they become our subscribers, just as any other SaaS platform, and they can start managing their community. Now, of course, right, maybe they are running a campaign, or it's a short-term project, right, and they need to collect feedback. So it makes sense for them to it makes sense for them and for us, right, for them to have priority on the map, right, maybe a blinking spot, and for us to really develop a business that serves their purpose, right? So we're not working on there yet. Right now we're completely focused on building the platform, on providing the experience for a community to have access to all this information. And once we've created this space, right, and we have a loyal community, and we see some growth, we'll start looking into that. But it's just going to take some time.
Absolutely. So I'm a big proponent of communities. It sounds like y'all are too. But one of the things that I'm really curious about is, especially once you're in the sort of entrepreneurial vein, you can tend to feel very alone and as though you have no, who's my counterpart? Who do I talk to about these things? And luckily you were able to find at least one outlet, if not perhaps many others, through Techstars, where you were able to connect with other civic-oriented or government-oriented technology companies. And so I'm curious how, if this is an interest of mine, if I'm starting a company where I feel that this is where the opportunity lies, where would I find maybe counterparts, cohorts, others to connect with, to really understand, to just, pinball off of? I feel like, especially thinking about the various segmentations, right? We're not in, this isn't like we're building a video game or something. In theory, there's a lot of video game developers out there. But now when we talk about the nuances of Civic, the nuances of engaging with the public, it can feel a lot more alone. So do you have any advice in that realm?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. So just to give you a local example here in San Antonio, you have the program CivTech SA. Now, CivTech SA is a program that is put forward in collaboration by the city and Geekdom, right? And then they get other local partners on certain in certain programs. And so what they do is the city says, okay, we have 5 challenges in the parks department, in the urban department, in different departments in the city. And so they put out these challenges, and with the help of Geekdom and in this program, CivTech SA, they allow people to propose, and they also allow single individuals, and then they bring them together and find them teams, right? And so that's one way to kind of look for opportunities where you can get connected to the community. But also you can always reach out to for example, your organization, Launch SA, right? There's a lot of people who they might have their own business already, or they might have an idea of what they want to do, but there might be some folks that are looking, what to do. And so just by putting people in the same room or joining spaces for discussion, these type of opportunities can emerge. Also, places like Geekdom, special a breeding ground for this type of ideas, because you're there, you're talking to people. You might just try conversation with someone, or you outpour your frustration about certain topics, and someone will say, hey, I really I feel the same thing, like, why don't we create a little website or a newsletter or something, right, just to get it started. And that's how you start building up on what could become your venture or your company or a project. And so I'll definitely say, go to where you could find some like-minded individuals, some spaces where you can find collaborators. That's a great space to start. Also forums, right? Twitter, Facebook, these websites where these groups or channels, people might be discussing certain things, and you might pick up, and don't be afraid to reach out, right? That's one of the things as an entrepreneur. If you see that someone posted, oh gosh, like again they pothole my street, you say, hey, here too, man, like, what are you gonna do about it? Or why don't we do something about it? Or how can we collaborate? And try to make these connections, and sooner than later you'll find a team or a collaborator for you to put your idea on the ground and running.
Absolutely. Actually, no, you bring it up, and I was literally thinking the other day, there's this one street I go down that I really need to just blast the city on, like, because it's progressively over the past 20 years just gotten to be terrible. But I'll be blasting your app with that report. But the other element that I was curious about, talking about civic engagement and really building something for the public. I've heard of instances in the past where proposals have been made like, oh, well, we kind of need this thing, and folks have built something. Maybe that works, maybe that doesn't, and it sort of falls on deaf ears. So I'm curious in terms of finding your way into the right government spaces or with the right people. Is this something where you would say, like, it's, I don't know if it's, on one way you might say beneficial, or would it be a necessity to engage with like the local politician? Or is it something that you would go more towards the department? Or I guess that's my question, is really like, how would I insert myself into the right vein and theory to be known? Because that to me, I mean, it's very nebulous, right? Government feels very nebulous. It shouldn't, but it does. Do you have any recommendations in that on that side of things?
Yeah, I mean, for example, we've collaborated with many council members here in San Antonio, and we know that they have very dedicated teams, right? So they have, in a way, intrapreneurs, right? What is called an intrapreneur, someone who within their organization are looking for ways to improve or innovate processes or systems of ways of doing things. And so some of those folks approach us and say, hey, we have this idea, a council member wants to be able to connect with the residents, like, what do you have anything that we can use, or do you guys could help us do this and that? So that's one way to start it, right? And sometimes they even get started themselves to work on it and say, hey, we created this, could we get some feedback from you guys, right? And so that's a way to kind of, one, have access to the information that the city council members have, which are all the issues in their communities, in their districts, right? Like, they know what are some of the challenges and some of the aches that the community have. That's one. And number two, you have access to a network of individuals, either in government, but also in the private sectors, because they work together. So you could also, find ways to connect with both in that matter.
Thank you. That helps illuminate just a bit for me, for sure. So I know that I know that you're a professor, and so I'm curious how much of this work is, or these discoveries, innovations that you've come together with. Are you writing a new book essentially, or does this parlay pretty well with stuff that you've learned about before? Is this just like bringing certain notions into the 21st century, or is it really more like, hey, we're writing the story right now? Does that make sense?
I think so. Yes. So as a academic, as a professor, I do it because it's a way for me to, help pass along some of the, knowledge to younger generations. I enjoy that. But in academia, as a researcher, because I founded a research lab in the university in Mexico, and I'm also part of the urban future lab here at UTSA. It's a way for me also to stay on top of the latest research. What are the new technologies, and in different fields in general, right? As a multidisciplinarian, everything that is going on psychology of behavior, on engagement practices, on innovation, construction environments, etc. And this is kind of what we do at the Urban Future Lab, right? We just try to analyze the urban environments and reimagine it through emerging technologies and how it could be developed to fit community needs. And so it gives me that sort of input of information, of influx of information that I can consume and then also translate into the business practice. It's not a, it's for me, it's been rewarding because I kind of get, the information, and then I'm, fortunate enough to have a company to put that into practice, right? And so definitely academia, you have certain bits of information, but you don't have the whole picture, right? And the business side goes way faster. The private sector goes way faster. So you just kind of have to find a balance. But I think that right now, especially with Iris, I think we're kind of creating our own path, building our own future as a company, as an organization, and we're building, right, products that we believe can make a change and can be important tools for people to build collaborative communities. So I don't know if that answered your question. Just gave you a little bit of an insight of.
It does. No. So I want to ask just one more question, and then if there are any other questions, again, we can open it back up. I mean, it's been open, but we'll keep it. Yeah. So it really didn't occur to me until you were just talking about it and the question was prompted. But universities sound like they're very similar to government in very many senses, right? Especially the larger they are, maybe the less agile they are. There's for sure levels of bureaucracy, and getting things done can sometimes equate to issues. But is that a vein that you could foresee? Or I mean, I don't want to sound like the I don't know, what is it, the like Marlboro or the Winston-Salem CEO, start 'em young or whatever. But is there a way to get students more involved, or is that an avenue that you foresee having inclusion with, like maybe building something that's like, I don't know if university tech is a thing, but something like that? It seems like such an interesting audience and repeatable and kind of follows a similar vein to government.
So the way I see that, Ryan, is so on the one hand, I am interested in applying the sort of design thinking, Scrum methodologies, based learning, project-based learning, and these new ways to provide students with an opportunity to learn by doing, right, projects, and kind of learn by default the methodologies for building products, for building companies. And I'm interested to see how that type of learning through experiences can provide a better structure for them, to accelerate the idea production and the process of turning those ideas into viable products, viable companies, viable services. And so on the one hand, and that at a more, sort of bachelor's level, right? Like undergraduate, because things go so fast in the private sector that sometimes what students learn, by the time they graduate, it's irrelevant, right? So they have to learn how to learn. And as far as the bureaucracy goes, I think, yes, I try to operate at a level of certain liberty, because it can become, very, very slow. And that's why I'm much more focused on the private sector. The academia for me is just a way to, continue to have this access to information and to, shape talent and help, these generations kind of become productive community members, right? And bring this philosophy and way of working to their communities. But yeah, I'll say right now my time is, probably 80-20, or even 90-10, much more focused on the private sector.
Yeah, well, and I guess maybe less so about the educational component, but more like, as I think about it, universities are also houses for, databases of tons of stuff, right? Which probably have no organization. I don't know, maybe it has organization or not. It just seems like the parallel of what you can do with public information in like a governmental sense may be also applicable to the university databases that, I don't know,
Definitely.
maybe there's no buyer for it. I have no idea, but.
Well, we see that. So for example, yes, our product just that we discussed right now with Chris about the Pizza Hut, right? I have conversation with, friends that are in academia that say, hey, I want to use your app because I'm interested in doing surveys, research, right? And so I could use your app to survey my department, my school, my class, and get that feedback. And so, turn that into a publication or whatever. So that at a, sort of professor level or researcher level, they could use our platform. But also at a school level, yes, of course. It's a tool that, will give universities a way to have a more direct channel of communication, so that they can participate also in a more, in this larger ecosystem of communities built around, infrastructure projects.
Well, no sweat. I really appreciate your time. If anybody has this, we probably have time for maybe one more question if anyone wants to ask something else. And again, no sweat if not.
Man, it's been fun. Thank you, Ryan. But yeah, I don't know, Chris, I see someone else there. Yeah.
Oh, good. Thanks. Thanks so much for sharing everything.
Yeah, of course. Well, Beto, I really appreciate it. I'm really glad that we had this chance to have this conversation. I feel like I am far more educated now. And in terms of ways that people can engage with you or can support you, do you have any recommendations or anything that would make it simple if somebody wanted to connect with you or just follow the goals or the success of Iris?
Definitely. Yeah. Thanks for that, Ryan. Twitter, I'm mostly active on Twitter, at Beto Gomez. Also shoot me an email, beto@heyiris.com. And yeah, that's kind of, the best way for anyone to reach me. Hopefully, we'll open up our offices soon also for visits, right? Now that things are opening up again. And yeah, I mean, you know, I love to connect with more members of the community. So just shoot me an email, beto@harris.com, or, you know, follow me on Twitter @Beto Gomez, and, you know, we'll start talking.
That's awesome. I just have to comment. I think it's really awesome that you were able to get @Beto Gomez. Like, I feel like that, for me, that would have been if I was trying to get it. But all right. Well, I appreciate it.
I was lucky.
Yeah, you're lucky. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Beto. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everyone else that participated and listened and will listen later. I appreciate it, and have a great rest of your day. We'll start our next session around 11.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, guys. Have a good day.
Have a good one.